Welcome to the Cyber Tech Podcast, inside the minds of everyday IT and cyber pros. Your host, Mike Fierros, will dive deep into the world of IT and cybersecurity, bringing you the stories and insights of professionals who are making waves in the field. From how they got started, to their most exciting projects, and their advice for aspiring tech enthusiasts, we cover it all. So, whether you're an industry veteran or just getting started, join us as we explore the fascinating minds behind the technology that shapes our world. Let's get started.
Hey guys, how's it going? Mike again, Cyber Tech Podcast, inside the minds of everyday IT and cyber pros. And this episode is going to be episode number 8, and this is a really special episode for you guys out there listening, trying to get into IT and or cybersecurity. Even personally for me, I've been listening to this gentleman for years now, without him knowing it, and whether it be on YouTube or even on a podcast and stuff like that. So definitely really honored and really grateful to have him on here. You guys may recognize him from IT Pro TV. And so the gentleman I have right here, his name is Ronald Wong. He is a information technology instructor, content development director. How's it going, Ronnie?
It is going well. Thank you for having me on your podcast. Been looking forward to this. We tried to schedule this a while ago, and I always
Yeah.
said, yes, there's plenty of time, and then it just disappears before you know it. But now I have plenty of time, so glad to be on.
No, I appreciate that, Ronnie. Yeah, you're right. We did try to do schedule earlier this year. I'm really grateful to have you on now, Ronnie. And like I mentioned before the podcast recording, I've listened to you for years without you knowing. And
hmm
I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds, thousands of techs out there that listen to you guys on IT Pro TV, and such a wealth of knowledge what you guys did over there. Even today, like I'm still learning stuff from the videos you guys have on there, all the content, all the knowledge that you have, and stuff like that. And really grateful, and thank you for being on here, Ronnie.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things where you look back and you don't realize, as you're doing some of those videos, because marketing saying, "Oh, we need to do more, we need to do that." And sometimes you go, is anybody really going to watch this or anything, learn anything from it? And then that's when we get those messages, right, that popped up even on LinkedIn or email or in the forums that we had, where people are saying, oh, I really did learn a lot, with that little tip that you had or the little short that you did. And so it's really validating, now over a decade in doing it, that people are starting to kind of reach out and say things like that. And, you always hope that what you do is going to be at least somewhat helpful. And it's always, humbling and flattering at the same time when people just tell you like, hey, we appreciate what you've done. And so with my recent change of events in my life, it has really been helpful to me to hear that.
Like I mentioned before, I've listened to you a little over 10 years now, and a lot of stuff. Like I'm kind of similar to you, Ronnie, where you transitioned, because
hmm
we'll talk about in a little bit here. But
Sure.
you since you transitioned your career from one industry to another, and I kind of did the same thing. And I was kind of I was always been the youngest person in working for a company or in a team or in the
hmm
industry. But when I
Right.
transitioned over, I ended up being almost one of the older ones, but
Yeah.
young as an IT tech. So it was
Right.
it was a little interesting, and hearing your story and several other podcasts a few years ago now, it kind of reassured me. It's like, okay, someone has been there before where they transitioned from one career to another one. And just hearing your
hmm
story, Ronnie, from another podcast I listened to years back, it gave me a lot of assurance. Like, okay, this is why I transitioned to IT. This is why I did
hmm
this. Even though I think I was 32 at the time coming into IT. I was a young man as far as like IT,
Yeah.
quote unquote IT experience and whatnot. And so listening to you talking about that really gave me more, really encouragement, because we have a lot of folks that listen to this particular podcast. It's kind of a mix. We have a lot of folks that
hmm
are young or still in high school, college, want to get into IT
Sure.
cybersecurity career. Folks transitioning from an industry like myself, like yourself did, Ronnie,
hmm
and into IT. And
Yeah.
that gave me so much encouragement hearing your story. That's something I really needed to hear, because I was like, can I really get into IT? I'm 32 years old. I'm young, but as
Yeah.
far as like as an IT tech, I was like, wait a minute, I'm a little older than most of the most of the guys I'm working with. Wait a minute, and so luckily, I listened to you guys, IT Pro TV, and then I had a really good director to kind of
Hmm.
lay the foundation and whatnot. And I appreciate that. But yeah, Ronnie, for those that may not know your background and what you do and how you got into IT field, can you go and share a little bit about yourself?
Sure thing. So my particular transition into the realm of IT came really during the days of Hurricane Katrina.
Mm.
I was working as a diesel technician off of a service truck, and if you don't know the idea of diesel, mechanic work, there's the high end guys that really, they have a shop, they have a lift, they have all the tools right and ready and available. And then, it goes down from there where you're just handing the people tools or you're going to get parts and stuff. And then you have the service technician guys that work on the trucks. Now, don't get me wrong, those guys are amazing in terms of being able to manipulate and change things and, make the things that they need on the spot. But that is the low end of work, which is service truck work, because you're working on the side of the road and you're doing all that. So when Hurricane Katrina came along, there was an opportunity for my boss, and on that service truck, we were going to head out to Katrina and start doing service and repair work on equipment that was out there doing disaster relief and recovery stuff. And it sounded amazing, right? The promise of
Mm.
pay was great, uh, but when it came down to it, it was when we finally kind of talked about it, we'd be out there for 6 months to a year, and
Oh
that's when I
wow.
said, I just can't, I can't do it. I had a 4-year-old daughter at home. I was like, I can't leave my daughter for 6 months or a year, not knowing, you know, when's the next time I'm going to see her. And we had talked about all different things that we could do to try and do, come back and forth, like once every 2 months or so. And I just figured I was like, there's no way I could do that. So I started to look around at what I could transition into and what I could do. And during that point, in terms of diesel work, everybody was heading out to Katrina, so any small company was out there, doing the same thing. So there was really no work. So I started to essentially go to a technical training school, trying to say, okay, I'll get a job, as a IT support tech somewhere, in the realm. And so I ended up signing up for an overpriced program, but I learned a lot during that time. So much to the point where I was, during that point I was call center technician for Javalia Coffee, or no, it wasn't Javalia Coffee. It
Oh,
was Virgin Mobile phones. They were coming out during Christmas, and so here's my schedule. Right, is that it would go in this way. My training for that job started at like 11 p.m. at night or 10 p.m. at night, and it went essentially until like 6 a.m. in the morning. So that was
oh
eight
wow.
hours. Yeah. And then I would drive down to my classes, which started, of course, during the day. And I would be there until right about 4:30, drive home, nap for about 5 hours, and then get to work, or 4.5 hours. Go. I did that for two
Mm.
months, and finally the guys there said, "You want to know something? We like your dedication." They said, "Do you think you could teach like Microsoft Word?" So I started to do that, and then started
Mhm.
hanging around and started getting technical classes. And all of a sudden, I started to actually kind of do well in technical classes. And then at that point, the teachers at that school, they were also the IT team that supported the entire business. So I was just hanging around watching them do stuff. And after that, I started to be able to get a couple of tech support jobs in a small company, there too. And so it really started in that way. And then the opportunity came where they asked if I would come back and start teaching some of those things. Did that for years. And then IT Pro TV came along. And that was the big challenge, right? Is because, you now had this training. What do you want to change about it? I was like, there's everything I would change about it. And that was the first opportunity we ever got, which was that the owner said, teach it the way that you'd want it be taught to you. And that was just kind of the prime directive that we all had when IT Pro TV started. So that was really kind of the impetus and beginning of everything. It sounds like, okay, well, that just took a few years, but in reality, right, I did the training side for 8.5 years. During that time, I was also doing a little bit of technical support work for two different companies, on the side as well,
Yeah.
and learning all the different things. and then IT Pro TV came along for another 8.5, 9, 10 years. So it was a long journey, but I've really never regretted any part of it. And it was hard. It took a lot of hours, took a lot of time. But, in the end, like what you were talking about, where people have actually been listening and been learning things, and, they express it. After a while, you kind of don't hear a lot because you're just so busy. But then when you finally do take the time to hear it, you really are. You're glad that you're able to be a help to someone in their career.
Man, yeah, no, that story is really, really encouraging because that's a really good example, Ron, of you working as a diesel mechanic, which is totally different from working in IT. And you're able to, with your ethic, you're able to introduce that into as an IT professional. And then even beyond that, even go into teaching. You'll find folks in the IT field who I think most of the time you'll find folks are more than happy to kind of take you under the wing, show you the right way,
Hmm.
create a good foundation with you. And then other times there's folks that, just don't want to teach you. So you take the good and the bad and you take them both and you
Hmm.
use it for your advantage and your learning and stuff like that. But I think that's a really good example of taking what you learned as a diesel mechanic and then, applying that into IT, especially dealing with end users. You have to be really patient.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
certain verbiage you have to use so they can really understand it. And I think
Hmm.
when I remember watching your videos, you and Daniel and Wes and the whole team over there at IT Pro TV, you guys did such a really good job of not just teaching, but like the way you pronounce your words, the quality of the training videos. I remember the first MSP I worked for. I was doing cloud training, and it was Wes and Daniel on it, and
Hmm.
it was during I dedicated like an hour or two for training and stuff like that. And the company I worked for had an IT Pro TV contract or deal and whatnot, and
Hmm.
so I always go use the portal. And your guys' videos were such very entertaining. I know you guys call yourselves edutainers, and that I think that's
Right.
a really good title because I'm soaking it in, but at the same time it's I feel like I feel like I'm right there with you guys in a sense.
Yeah, and that particular term came about because the founder, Tim Broom of IT Pro
Mm,
TV, he would sit there and listen to us kind of talk about the technology that we were dealing with and the troubleshooting that we were dealing with, and how some of them actually were really funny and entertaining. And we just sit around the table for a couple of hours, right? Or sitting in a chair in
mm,
his office, and he would just sit there and soak it in and go, man, he's like, I could sit here and listen to this all day. He's like, if training was this way, he says people wouldn't quit the training. Would they go ahead and do, IT training a lot? And so we kind of tried to embody as much of that as we could into that two-person format, just so that we
mm,
could have that, that idea, the conversation that we wanted to involve people in. So it was always about
mm,
that, where, in the end, when it came down to it, he said, guys, it's not even the fact that it's about the story and the technology. He says it's you guys. He says it's the very fact that you are passionate and that you bring your personality into whatever you're actually doing. And so I don't know if he technically coined the term, overall,
uh,
but he's kind of the first one I know that actually put it into some type of use, for a company that,
mm,
we just kind of, took that moniker on. So that was our goal, was always that it shouldn't be a lecture. It shouldn't be, where it's bullet points and power, voice over PowerPoint, but it was always supposed to be engaging, trying to bring somebody
mm,
into the audience. And all of us that were instructors before a classroom, the big change was actually just going to being able to instruct, and there was nobody in the class. And that was probably the hardest transition there, was to try and
mm,
realize and figure out that you had to, you still had to actually teach us as if you were talking to someone, even though they're not there. And that was really more of probably the challenge that we all had until, we kind of got into a rhythm and our own rhythm of how we would do that. So it was really kind of a neat story there.
I like how like there was a particular video series I watched. I never got the certification because I believe it was with Anthony, I think Siqueiros, the
Mhm.
CCIE. You
Yep.
got you and him did a like a journey, like a path to do that.
Right.
And I've never done that, but I just watched it, and I like how you guys did those videos and how it was just like you mentioned, just conversations. It was also just
Yeah.
conversations, and you felt like you were there. I was there with you guys, just like
Hmm.
listening to you guys, even if I'm in the same room, not talking, just listening to you guys, and
Right.
that was really cool
Yeah, that was the
for sure.
brainchild of Anthony Sequeira. He's like he just turned to my boss one day and said, I think Ronnie could get his CCIE. And I looked at my boss and was like, I don't think so. And then he said, oh yeah, Ronnie would love to do that. And it's like, oh, we'll do a series. And that's how that one happened overall. So I give him the credit for coming up with that idea. He kind of had to drag me by the collar in, because I didn't really want to dress up and do the stuff that they made me do in that stuff. So, but
uh,
in the end, we had fun doing it. But still, I was like, I don't have enough time to do that, and I spent a good deal of time trying to earn the CCIE. But in the end, I ended up getting promoted, and then all of a sudden that kind of fell off. Because work kind of takes place over, this idea of pursuing this dream and goal. In the end,
yeah.
because we just needed the work to get done.
Going into like certifications, I get a lot of folks email me or even just message me on LinkedIn. A lot of younger folks trying to figure out, if they should get a college degree, 4-year
Hmm.
college degree, or get a certification. And I have a
Hmm.
question here for a young man. Let me pull up. This is a young man. He's actually in California. This is a young man that messaged me not too long ago, and he asked me, should I get my cybersecurity degree or should I just go for certifications? What's the benefits of both of them? And for you, Ronnie,
Hmm.
all the experience that you have gone through IT Pro TV and all the IT experience
Right.
you have, what would you say for someone asking that?
Yeah. So this is a great question asked, because I think that what you have to realize, right, especially in today's world, and I'd say even in the last 5, maybe 6 years or so. Okay, technology is changing at such a rapid pace. A 4-year college degree in cybersecurity, the stuff you're going to actually be graduating, and you're getting your degree in, is going to be 4 years old. And that is because they have to structure those programs around 4 years at a time, right? So even in your senior year, you're not learning technology that's just coming out a lot of times. You're still learning things that they would have had to put into that curriculum about 4 years ago. So you're behind the eight ball in terms of that. Okay. Now, in that sense, though, that's where certifications come in, because those things are always up to date. Uh, you know,
Hmm.
I guarantee you, I've done this literally. Okay, where I recorded the entirety
Hmm.
of CompTIA A+, and 3 weeks later they dropped a new exam objective. This was early on in IT Pro TV, when we had no
Oh.
clue how we were doing this, right? It was just, what are we going to record? You're going to record A+, Ronnie. Okay. So we finished doing that, and then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, they just dropped the new exam objectives and literally started over. But now we kind
Oh.
of figured out how to track that a little bit easier, which made it, a little bit more digestible when we go, okay, it's 6 months away, let's hold off until we can get close. But so
Hmm.
you have these two things, right? You might need a college degree. Okay, if that
Hmm.
job opportunity says, we want you to be college educated, okay, and a degree in this is preferable, well, that's when you can actually reach out and see who you can talk to, right? Not just a hiring guy, but look for someone in that company that you can reach out to and go, hey, what if I got a degree, but I had like classes in cybersecurity, right? Take a class
Hmm.
or two. Put the college degree in the context of something you really want to learn and develop your sense of purpose as a human being in, but focus on some technology in that point, right? Uh, I wouldn't do it in just entirely cybersecurity. Now, if they go, no, we need a cybersecurity degree, well, then you got to go and do your cybersecurity degree. But if it's not a qualification in that job description, I wouldn't worry about it. That's me personally. The certifications itself, right? They don't prove that you know anything, but what they can prove, right, is that you can learn that skill in cybersecurity, and that you were actually able to take an exam and be able to kind of get that comprehensive knowledge behind it. Even today in cybersecurity, especially in the realm of red teams and everything else, in that
Hmm.
more penetration testing area, right? It's not even about that, right? They're all skills based, and that is kind of the key in today's world is saying, I want to focus on skills that are going to make me effective, okay? And that's going to help me to solve problems. And that's kind of been my real focus recently in terms of developing is like especially since I've lost my job, and I'll say it right here, I lost my job, is I got to realize I
Mm.
can't just bring problems into the open, right? I need to bring solutions. If I'm going to get hired somewhere, I need to actually say, all right, here's what I can do for you. And
Mm.
I think that that's the same thing, is that what you're looking to do then is you're looking to put yourself in that best place where you can solve that problem and solve that issue. So that's what I would say is, if you're taking a look at college, if they go, you need a degree in cybersecurity, you absolutely have to do it. Most of them will even include in certifications in that to try and keep them current. But overall, though, just kind of realize that you will have some dated material in there. There's no getting around that because of the way that colleges work, right? Um,
True.
I mean, you can't do that. But if it were me, I would focus in and just go, if they require certification, let me focus in on certifications. If it's really only skills based, let me see what everybody else is doing to train up those skills and focus in on that. And keep talking to people in the industry. Don't just take one person's advice. Talk to everyone about it that you
Mm.
can, and say, man, I really want to get into this. Everybody keeps telling me, that it should be this or that, but what do you think? And ask those questions, and somebody is going to kind of give you, a straight answer that you're going to need and look for. But that's the advice that I've given everybody in the last few years is, if it's only skills that they're looking for, why would you spend 4 years of time trying to figure that out? You know, I wouldn't do that. I would actually go, all right, let me focus on the skills. If I want to go and get a college degree, I'll get a college degree in something that I really want to learn, and make that something that is more of an enrichment idea. You're going to pay money for it, but there's some skills you're not going to learn at home. You're going to have to learn through college, and it doesn't always have to be an Ivy League college, right? It can be your
True.
local community college, and you get that degree. It could be a 2-year degree, right? If it's
Mm.
technology focused, do that, and just figure that stuff out. But today, you want to get into the market as soon as you can, because even this market, like every other market, it fills up. In theory, there's supposed to be like 10 million plus jobs. But if you look around, like even on LinkedIn today, right? People
Mhm.
are, I mean, they've all got the little green mark on their, on their avatar, just like I have, which means, hey, everybody's looking for work. So, as many jobs there's out there, they're all getting filled, and that means that the majority of job openings that are out there are not what people's looking to do. But if you're young and you're
Mm.
willing to do that, you can get into those jobs, and then you'll find that once you get in that job, people leave those jobs very quickly, and you'll get promoted very quickly too if you continue to learn and develop. So I just ran over whatever question that you had for me. Didn't
No,
even
no,
answer
you're
it, did
good. No, you did right. No, that's a huge no, that's a huge nugget. That's a huge nugget. I think that's something, when I was a younger man listening watching you guys' videos, I remember you guys mentioned those things, and such a really, it weighs more than gold, that what you
I?
mentioned, that right there. I totally agree with that. Like, especially if you're young and you're trying to get into the industry, like you mentioned, look see what skills are out there. Like for example, like I went to college, and I was pursuing my media arts degree in the emphasis of radio
Hmm.
broadcasting. Well, I didn't I didn't go in radio broadcasting, but what I did learn from radio broadcasting, I kind of infuse it what I'm doing now,
Hmm.
and man, that's such a
Yeah.
good nugget that you give right there, Lonnie, for sure.
Man, just think about this, right? When I went to college, right? I thought I knew what I wanted to do, and then I got to college,
Yeah.
like, is this really what I want to do? And then you graduate with a degree, and this was the funniest thing when we all started talking about this. Like, hey, what's your degree in? And then you find out that someone, has a degree in English. Another person had a degree in, like you said, media services or something, right? My degree was in theology. I mean, when it
That's
comes
awesome.
down to it, everybody but we all ended up in the technology field somehow, right? And that
Mhm.
became our living. But what I think I would do now, right, is get into the field of something that you can enjoy and you can do, like like IT. Okay, do that absolutely. you'll make money, you'll continue to grow, and you can even advance in that. But then after a few years, go, you want to know something? I think I really want to try and go to law school. What's preventing you? You know, why
Mm,
not at that point? You go, if I don't make it in law school, what can I do? You're not stuck with a degree in, you know, Babylonian history. I use that as
yeah.
I mean, you're not stuck where, it, if I don't get into teaching, wait a minute, you mean I could probably still work at a job and now earn a degree and, not feel like I have to go into depth and,
Mm,
incredibly to do so. I think that you'd be more focused and you'd find college more enriching and less distracting than when I was in my late teens and 20s, early 20s. I would
mhm.
have been a lot more focused during college. If I had had a few years of work and understand, and that's what I realized too. With like people that came out with the GI Bill, you know, they focused in and they were like, okay, I'm getting my degree and I'm getting out of here. That-
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I was like, how did they have that discipline? And it's because they were already working and like they don't want to waste time. They want to get their stuff out and go. So I think that today, if it were me, I think I could do the same thing and go, oh, I'm going to go back and I'm going to take, a few years and, go and do an art degree if I wanted to, or, you
Mm.
know, something, and appreciate the hell out of it at this point in my life.
Yeah, because it's crazy how much the learning and structural learning has changed from like the early let's say
Oh yeah.
2000 2001 versus 2024. In 2001, people still rolling in classrooms. There's people still rolling in with the TV set with the little
Oh
little
yeah.
rack thing pushing the VCR or DVD when they came out, and now it's just all streaming. And so streaming has replaced a lot of those VHSs, DVDs,
And you
for
could
sure.
get it anywhere, right? You could go on vacation to Japan and go, you want to know something? I want to learn about IT auditing. You pull up YouTube, and there you go. You don't have to bring a machine with you. You don't have to bring DVDs. It's
True.
everywhere. Learning is so ubiquitous at this point. The key is, how do you do it to the point where you go, I know I can learn something in 15 minutes. And I think that
Mhm.
that's the key today is after 15 minutes, people are probably going to be turning things off a lot of times. We had to learn that even in IT Pro TV. We began originally with like 2 hour episodes is how we began. And then we focused in on 30 minutes and then it became 20 minutes. And the most recent one were 7 to 10, 7 to 12 minutes long. It's
Mm.
because we realized that the attention span and the viewing of what most people can do is that they're learning in their breaks, right?
True.
They're taking their lunch and they're eating a sandwich and watching it. Sitting down and like, oh, I've got to figure this out, and then they turn on a video and they watch it for a few minutes. Rewind it and watch it again for a few minutes. It's understanding that type of technology, and that's the focus. That I would say that if you're a trainer, you got to figure that out and figure out how the heck that's going to work in your advantage.
And I have one more question, Ronnie,
Sure.
from another guy somewhere in the East Coast. He mentions about setting up a home lab. How important is setting up a home lab? Like, for example, you want to get to networking, you want to get
Mhm.
into desktop support or even coding and stuff. How important is to have a home lab and kind of tinker with stuff?
Anytime that you can, associate what it is that you're learning with something tactile, is better. Okay, no matter what you do. When I first, my focus was on Cisco, and CCNA and CCNP stuff, right? When I started typing the command line, I just all of a sudden it just started making sense, right? And I started to do it. And all of a sudden, what I realized is that not only did I understand the commands I was reading and typing and doing that, but after a while, I could even type in the commands like just in my brain and literally see like the lines that I was typing at that point because you were doing it so often, right? And then it makes sense in context when someone says, "Oh, what's that command?" And then I just see it in my brain going across, and I can actually tell them what it actually is. So anytime you can make more associations like that, the better it's going to be. Now, setting up
Mhm.
home lab can be challenging, but there are ways to do it. And today is probably the easiest that there is with a laptop. You can bring up some type of virtual environment for free using something like Oracle VirtualBox if you want to, and a Linux distribution. And heck, you can't get away today in being in IT without learning a Linux distribution like Ubuntu. So it's a great opportunity, even if you're Windows or a Mac user or whatever it might be, right? Is to actually go ahead and begin to, you know, to go, all right, I'm going to learn how to do this, but on a Linux machine. Okay. Don't, if you go, I don't really like to use it every day, fine. Create a project in Linux and figure out how the hell to do it in Linux. That's going to serve you more in IT than you believe, because it's just so prevalent in today's world. Back when I started, everything was Windows, okay, and it seems like Linux was just in the server world and that's it. Today, though, everybody, especially in cybersecurity, is pushing Linux. So that's what I would do. I'd learn how to actually configure, things inside of a Linux box, understand what those things are, and after a while, you're going to do that, and then somebody's going to say, "Do you know Linux?" And go, "No, yeah, I'm pretty good with Linux," and that might be your key to moving on to the very next level when you're desktop support and somebody says, "You can do that?" "Yeah, I can do that." There you go. And all of a sudden you're moving into another team before you realize it.
And then also you can also put in your your resume and
Yep.
build that skill set right there. That's
Mhm.
awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing today on what you can do with this little equipment as we have. I was laughing about it the other day. My phone that I have, right, is more powerful than the very first server I ever bought. You know,
Oh man.
so yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Ironically, I think has more RAM than the first server I ever actually made, and more.
Oh
It
man.
doesn't have more hard drive space, but it was just one of those things where it's like, heck, that's a multi-core. My first one was on a Pentium,
Yeah.
computer, not multiple cores. It was just, the Pentium core. That was pretty much it. And it was hyper-threading, and it had 4 gigs of RAM, and we thought we were big stuff, with 4 gigs of RAM,
Uh-huh.
and yeah, there we were. We were running virtual. It was called Microsoft Virtual Server 2005, and
Oh.
I was like, oh my gosh, look how smart we are. And then you look at your phone like that's more powerful than that first server that I ever ran. So there you
Yeah.
go.
And I think that's why I really appreciate a lot working IT is that, and you mentioned too before in your videos, Ronnie, that you're constantly learning,
Right.
and people have different ways of learning and stuff like that. But it definitely makes it easier when I was watching your guys' videos when it came to learning and that stuff. And thanks again, Ronnie, for being on this
Hmm.
podcast, man. It's such an honor to have you on here. And I know and I'm really grateful, and I know it's going to help a lot of people that listen to this podcast get to go on YouTube and see your guys' videos that you guys have on there. Ronnie, if someone wanted to get a hold of you, what's a good
Sure.
way to get a hold of you if they have any career IT questions, stuff like that?
Yeah. LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I usually answer all the messages that I can, and
Yeah,
usually relatively quickly.
yeah,
So I'm pretty much there, and trying to put my name out there as much as possible.
for sure. And I'll make
Yep.
sure also I put on the show notes right here. That way, someone wants to
Yeah.
get a hold of you, Ronnie, they could just click on it and get a hold of you on LinkedIn. I want one fun question here: Chuck Norris or Bruce Lee?
Chuck Norris or Bruce Lee. Well, at this point, you'd have to go with Chuck Norris, right? The
Yeah,
the legend around him. Bruce Lee, you hate to say it. In the end, he's a very small fighter. Chuck Norris, though,
yeah,
I think
yeah.
you'd have to give it to him if they went head to head. I think it's just the endurance and the size. Yeah,
Oh
Chuck Norris,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
That's awesome. Man, I remember growing up with seeing Chuck Norris and looking at the memes online of the boogeyman scared of Chuck Norris,
yeah,
and all
yeah,
that stuff. And it's such
yeah,
great, and I think he's 84 or 85.
yeah.
He's still
Oh,
working now, and
he's
I'm just like, wow.
yeah, yeah. I had a friend that earned his black belt under Chuck Norris.
Oh, that's awesome.
Way back,
That's awesome.
yeah, way back in the early '80s, and
Oh.
the only story that he would ever relay is like, you do not want to match him in drinking beer. He'll walk into your house with two cases of beer, and like, oh gosh, and that's not to share; it's for him. So, it was like, wow, yeah. So,
That's awesome. No, that's really
yeah,
cool. thanks again, Ronnie, for being on the podcast. And thank you guys for listening to the CyberTech Podcast, Inside the Minds of Everyday IT and Cyber Pros, episode number 8 with Ronald Wong. And thank you guys.